Welcome to Rhythm of Love, the podcast. I'm Clarence.
And I'm Yalonda. We celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary by writing a book together about what it took to get us here.
And in this podcast, we go deeper and break down what we learned along the way. We hope you enjoy and engage.
Comment, share, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what you have to say about what it takes to make relationships last.
Yes, we will.
Welcome to episode 8 of Rhythm of Love, the podcast with Yalonda and Clarence.
I'm Clarence. She's Yalonda.
Y'all have to make that clear for y'all.
For any confusion, that's Yalonda. I'm Clarence. So we've been married for it's going on 28 years.
It'll be 28 years in July.
And we wrote this book called The Rhythm of Love that you guys know is right here.
Right there. And right here for a closer up look.
And this podcast is based off of excerpts and details from that book. So if you get a chance and you want to be more engaged with us or understand more what's going on, you should pick yourself up a copy at cYLentertainment.com or Amazon or any other place where you purchase books from. You can get it from there. We have ebooks and we have audiobooks.
Yes.
So you'll be able to grab both of them and any of them and be able to check it out.
It's called The Rhythm of Love, 25 Things That 25 Years of Marriage Taught Us.
Correct. So we look forward to, your book purchases and just as importantly to us, we look forward to your comments and your feedbacks on the videos. So please like, share, and subscribe. Please, 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 please.
We appreciate you for that.
We appreciate it. So what are we talking about this week?
So we teased last week that we were talking about our chapter called Pillow Talk.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I do remember. Is that
what you're ready to talk about?
I mean, you're
always ready to talk about whatever.
I'm always ready to talk.
This is very true. I can attest.
I'm not even Toastmasters. This is if you saw the reel that talked about me and my
last episode,
my desire for debate. I'm not sure it's quite that, but I can understand why it would be perceived as that. So that's where we are.
So we teased last week that we would talk about this chapter called Pillow Talk.
Sure.
Pillow Talk was written by me, and it's about how a new perspective on sex for me in the later years of our marriage, or the second half. I'm not sure. We don't have a timeline, but it did take a while for me to get this kind of newer perspective on sex and what it has done for our relationship.
Sure. So
before we talk about the current view, should we talk about the rocky beginning like we typically do?
So, I mean, we can. Sure. What is your perspective of the beginning? Because you typically start these shows off by asking me my perspective, and then I dominate the conversation.
I'm glad you noticed that about yourself.
So I'm going to let you start. What do you think about the beginning parts of our relationship as it pertains to sex?
I think that we came into our marriage with different views on sex or different expectations in terms of sex. We had dated before, we had sex before. Oh, and maybe I should have said this in the very beginning, but I know that our parents have been watching diligently all of our episodes, and this might be one that you want to skip.
Skip is not the right word. I mean, this is you going.
But you're going to hear some things that you probably think are not your business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not about business, but I would also say if you have children that you want, this is going to be a more revealing conversation than you might want to have if you're listening to this around kids. So
yes,
let's give that disclaimer
up top. Yes. Okay, so we had sex before we got married. However, I think that when we got married, that we had a lot to contend with in terms of coming to a sexual place that was where we both felt like we were getting what we needed. And even now it's always a process. But I had a religious upbringing where everything about sex was wrong and bad and going to send you to hell. So just knowing my body, knowing the things that turn me on were all off limits, and I hadn't really explored that. I had always been more of a responder to my long-term boyfriend, who also went to my same church and was trying to respect me being a virgin. I was a virgin when I got to college, and I think that, and then I didn't have like a quote unquote high body count, or, it's pretty on the low side for my experiences before you. And I think that neither one of us really knew enough about sex from a more psychological standpoint, in that, not everybody experiences sexual desire in the same way. The mainstream belief about sex is that if you're attracted to someone, you're going to want to have sex with them, and you're going to, do the things to make sure you're having sex with them. Some people are spontaneous in that way, most people. And some people are more like what I figured out very much later, more of, like I said, a responder. I respond to external stimuli more than having an internal spontaneous drive to like, ooh, let me go get that. And, I had to come to accept that and know that it was just a normal thing, that not everybody is the same. Also, being the complex woman that I am, of course, stress, fatigue, uncertainty, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, time of day, time of month, just feeling like I needed validation from you in all these ways affected whether I was in the mood at a particular time or not. So I feel like we just had a lot of disconnection there in the beginning of our marriage.
I mean, it then and now still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, and I respect the words that are coming out of your mouth, but that doesn't mean I understand. That doesn't mean
right.
That doesn't mean I even have any inkling of what you're saying. I was there, and let me tell you how I experienced it.
Right.
All of the things that you said about your past, about your upbringing, I knew all of those things.
Yeah.
But we had so little problem with sex while we were not married that
I think your expectations were a little different as well. But go ahead.
I wouldn't even get to what my expectations were, but we had so little problem with it before we got married that I never expected that once we got married, it would be, for all intents and purposes, worse. And not worse as a quality, but worse as a quantity, worse as a frequency, those types of things. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person, and I won't say man because it could be anybody in a relationship who feels like, or can feel like, their spouse is undesiring of them because you have free access to me or to a person, and everything seems to be of a higher priority. I've said this with these words to you. Everything seems to be of a higher priority. And it's almost like you slip and land on me rather than you have some intention of trying to get with me. And, you know, that was a huge problem early on in our relationship. And it makes me feel two ways. The first one was undesirable. The second one is taken for granted. So,
no, I get that. I think we were speaking completely different languages as far as sex. When the I want to say baggage, but that gives such negative connotation, but I can't think of another word. So I'm saying the baggage of everyday life. And, you know, for me, you know, when we first got married, I was in medical school, which was super high stress for me, and, you know, uncomfortability and all those things. And, you know, when we met and we were just dating, you know, there was very little stress. You know, there was very little, you know, things to get in the way. Like life was just much more simple and, you know, I'm not saying these things to give you, you know, anything new that you haven't heard before. It's more for us to have this conversation here, because I could, you know, I hear you loud and clear that you didn't understand it then, you don't understand it now. So I can't break it down in a way that's going to be like, ping, the light's going to come on and you're going to understand. Which is what I eventually realized. Like, you know, I'm not able to articulate what it is that I want. It was never about desire. It was always internal. It was always, you know, how I thought you felt about me, completely unrelated to sex. But as I said, being the complex woman that I am, I can't connect with you. I felt like I couldn't connect with you sexually when all these other things were going through my mind about, you know, either your disappointment or your, you know, not understanding of my struggles with time, or you're not, you know, you're having issues with, you know, me being too much at school, or not, you know, not checking in when I was away for hours and hours on end. So, you know, I always felt like I was kind of in a deficit with you from a relational standpoint. And so that did not lend itself to be like, oh, well, let me jump on him and he'll forget all that. Eventually, I got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to have to jump on him. I won't have to try something new, because what I'm talking about and, you know, I've read, you know, I tried to read to understand. And, you know, the understanding that I got was that, you know, as a woman, I need connection first and then sex flows. Whereas you as a man, or just us as the people that we are in a relationship, the connection is never going to be there if the sex is not there. So I had to change my whole view of like, okay, what am I going to have to do to get myself to the point where, you know, I'm initiating more, I'm saying yes more to you, that kind of thing. I had to just decide that I was going to get myself there and see what happens. Is that going to have an impact on our connection? And I think that it did in so many ways. Because, you know, there was more of a free flow between us. There was less arguing. You didn't seem to be as bothered by some of the things that would typically, you know, rub you the wrong way when, you know, we were having sex more freely. And so it was kind of like a reward on the backhand side for me, because, you know, we did start to connect in the ways that I wanted us to connect. And I was starting to get some of the validation from you that I wanted to get. And, you know, also a lot of other things were changing in our lives at the same time.
I don't, I agree. So let's affirm what you've said, which is I agree that certainly was the result of the shift that you made, and it was a shift you made, not a shift I made. So you came more this way than I went that way. So I get that, because. Well, we won't get into. I didn't know how to go that way, and that's fine. So I get that. I just don't the parts. So we're happier there. So I don't want to make the words that I'm saying now belittle where we are now and the progress that we've made. So, but. You say things like, you know, it was just so much going on and it was just this, as if it was only going on for you. And that's how it comes.
Our lives. Well, I certainly didn't intend for it to be like it was just going on with me. We both were going through all the things that were happening. Going through. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Right.
And the part I never understood is you were my refuge. I've said these words to you before. Right. You were my refuge. You were where I went to stave off the things of the world
that we were going through.
And I was never your refuge. And I'm not even sure even to this day, I'm not even sure I am your refuge.
And I have said this to you before, that you have not been my refuge. It ebbs and flows. But you know, more so than not, you hadn't been my refuge, because emotionally you are not a refuge for me. It's, you know, I didn't feel there's one thing to like have a spouse that tells you you're sexy and tells you you're beautiful and those kind of things. And then there's another thing to have a spouse who affirms the rest of you as a person. And that's where the disconnect was mostly, because it is difficult for you to affirm people in general. Maybe, you know, your friends, people you respect for or hold in high regard for for their skills as a DJ or for their leadership in the workplace or those kind of things. You might say those things to me. But for a long time, you were not affirming to me. You were not, it was almost like I was on eggshells waiting for you to have something to say about something you disagree with. My decision making, the time I spent here, there, the money I spent here, there, whether or not I was in medical school or not, there was always, just whether I didn't know what I was going to eat. And there wasn't like right now we can joke about some of the things that we disagree about and that rub either one of us the wrong way. There's more of a levity to it, but there was no levity in the beginning of our relationship. It was just like, I felt more often than not that you thought I sucked as a person. You were not a refuge. For me, to have a refuge would be someone who validates me and who, thinks I'm awesome, or even says, I know that you have these imperfections and you have these flaws, and I love you anyway. I love you through them. I love you in spite of them. I love them because of them. You know, if anybody was going to drive me crazy all day, I would want it to be you. These are not the types of things that you were saying to me.
Correct.
So I didn't, that meant you were not a refuge.
So that started early then. That started 2 months into our marriage.
Are you asking?
No, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. If this is how you feel, then it started a couple of months into our marriage.
Early. It did. It did start early.
And lasted years.
And
you never said any of these things.
I didn't know how to articulate those things. I did say what I could say. What I was able to say, I said. And it was not in a way that you were either able to hear or receive them. So, I can't say more than that on that. I remember like you might be laying in the bed on a Saturday or something watching a movie, and I would just come and lay on you, and you would just let me lay on you. You wouldn't like hold me or hug me or touch me gently. It was like, it felt like touch for you was supposed to lead. If it's not leading to sex, we have no reason to touch each other. And in line with that, I had said to you, you had, because there was many times where we tried to have this conversation, and you had asked me, what do you need from me in order to, feel turned on, those kind of things. And I remember saying, I need you to just touch me in non-sexual ways, touch my shoulder, rub my back, or whatever the examples that I gave. And you were almost offended, like, touch your shoulder, like, why would I do that when it's a perfectly good set of boobs right there that I could touch? And I think that's just, that less overt, that more subtle kind of romance and cuddling and all those things that we do now were absent from the early years of our marriage.
Yeah, I mean, again, I won't disagree with you but I just don't know. I don't disagree with you. I'm sure that what you're saying is accurate, and it's not a memory question, because I do remember these things. So I what I don't remember is how I felt, or what my processing was to say why is this important or why is this not important. I can't tell you that part, but I can say that they're true, and I can say that I had to grow as a person. I wouldn't even say as a person. I had to grow as a spouse in order to be able to learn to try to give you those things. So we talk about backgrounds. Mm-hmm. We talk about your church background. We talk about those things. Mm-hmm. My background was providing. Mm-hmm. My background is, you make sure that your wife and your family, your family, we have kids. I'm sure we had kids at some point.
We did.
They did at some point. We had some kids, so that you take care of them,
right?
And that you make sure that they're taken care of. You make sure that they have all the necessities of their lives that they need. And I spent most of my time focused there, making sure, going as far as, when you went to grad school, you had to go full time in your program. Mm-hmm. I ended up going full time the last year, eventually, But even when I was going full time, I was still working full time.
Yeah.
I was still, I had three. By that last year, I had three jobs. That last year, I had 3 part-time jobs while I'm going to school. Because regardless of the fact, for me, that I'm going to school, you still got to have a place to go. You still got to have a place to live. You still got your car note still has to be paid. My car note still has to be paid. You might not even had a car note by that point, but the point is the material things of our relationship, which to me at that point in my life were foundational. Mm-hmm. This is my job, mm-hmm. and not a lot of room. For
other
let me rub my wife's shoulder. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, and I'm not saying that it is something that shouldn't be done. But I can feel confident that my feelings were, how can this be more important than this? And
it's not more important. It's not more important. I mean, it might be more important. If we had been living in that little apartment that I got when I first moved there, that wasn't so great, and we had the Hyundais for the whole time, or but we had a strong emotional connection that might have, obviously I can't say for 100% certainty, but I think I would have been fine with that. I think I didn't need this life. I went into our marriage thinking we are 22 and 25 years old. I'm a full-time student. I was never expecting Waterford Village, which was, that for people who don't know, that first apartment complex that we moved in, that was high luxury. I was not expecting that. That was a surprise, and it was I had positive feelings, obviously, about, okay, he moving me up from my little basement apartment. I brag about you to my friends and things like that. But I didn't need that in order to feel attracted to you. I understand the climb. I grew up constantly in the climb. It was already more than I had. The fact that each of us had a vehicle and we didn't have to catch the bus and we didn't have to beg for rides from other people, that was already more than I had come from. So, it may have been more important.
Okay. It's easy to say in retrospect.
It is. I mean, right. We can't wind the clock and figure that out. But I do feel confident in saying that I wasn't asking for this dream world from you.
So I think,
or even whatever world.
Yeah, and I think that
in terms,
I think it's a bit of an overstatement that it was in any way a dream world.
Well, it was a dream world for me as a student. Well, I mean, then I went to UNC and saw really how people was living dream worlds.
So
where they own houses and were students.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But
I never looked at it as a dream world.
I exaggerate with the word dream world.
Even Waterford Village,
the provision,
the provision was basic to me. It was what you should do, and I know that there are people who have, they share a car, or they don't have a car, but I don't have that story. I don't have that story. So my father and my mother always had cars.
Each of their own vehicle, and probably a vehicle for the kid, for y'all to drive.
No.
It was just the two cars. Okay.
So I don't have that story.
Yeah.
It was
how you expected to live. This is how you had been living.
Right.
This is how I expect to live. I mean, you bought a house straight out of college. how many people even do that? So
if Lily Lewis was your mother,
this is why we're talking about this, because
who
we came from different perspectives.
Who told me don't rent. We're not renting, we buying.
Yeah.
So I didn't, so I don't have that.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying more now than I did then, because I got a bigger perspective. But I didn't think that I was doing anything extraordinary as far as the accommodations of our life.
Okay. But you did think that, wow, I'm doing this. It may not be extraordinary, but I got a roof over her head, a nice roof, vehicle, gas always in the car.
But it wasn't,
blah, blah, blah.
Even when we moved to the small apartment, I still felt the same way.
No, I mean, right. The basics were all filled in for you.
The basics were covered.
There was no struggle.
There was no struggle.
Even we just downsized because it was like, one, we weren't even using all the space we had in either one of the other two apartments. We didn't even have furniture in the living room in Waterford Village. So, we downsized and, just became more realistic about what we could afford, being now 2 full-time students.
Right.
But I know full-time students who weren't living as well as we were. Maybe not our classmates, because we had some special classmates, but it's in general the idea of a full-time, a spouse, 2 spouses who are full-time students, and not having the struggle factor. We ate well, we went out, all those things.
So, again, saying for myself, or saying how I process that, to me, all of what you needed was taken care of. Now, and to get into these other things,
right?
I felt that you were tacking on stuff that you needed me to do in order to just be with you.
And it came across. It came across that you felt that way. It did come across, because you were like, all right, I'll do it. But then when the sex didn't immediately come to fruition, it was like, see, you just asking for stuff.
You just asking for stuff. You just asking for stuff. Because
I could sense that this was, you were doing it to check a box. You weren't, this is not how you felt about me. And now I know, I'm hearing you say, I'm showing you how I feel about you by being here, providing all these things, working all the jobs that I'm working, giving you, giving us a life. So, what do you mean? I hear that loud and clear. And I think, in our youth, in our personalities, we were just hitting a wall anytime we would try to have this conversation. Like, people would say, oh, just communicate. Oh, just tell your needs. And that's not as simple as people put it.
No.
It's really not. You can feel like you are expressing your needs. You can feel like you are saying what you have to say, and the person is not hearing you. The person is processing it in a completely different way from you, and that's how it was for us. We just were not speaking each other's language for so long.
So, but again, kudos to you, because I don't know that. So I don't know that I ever made the turn. I think you made the turn that caused both of us to be able to make the turn. So right. I don't want to take. I want to take very little credit for that. Very, very little credit for that. So, but I said it in the show last week that ended up being one of the clips where we talk about, not circling back in the idle mind, because you start to you start to question yourself. You know, am I not satisfying?
Is she not attracted?
Attracted to me? Am I not enough for her? And all of those things could be true. It doesn't, you know, and they could be false. But when you don't have a person who is showing you
in the way that you need to be shown.
I'm not even sure. So what's the way that you show that that's not the way that you need to be that was I don't understand that. What's the way that you
there was one measure for you. There was, are we having as much sex as I want, or are we not? That was the measure for you, for whether I was attracted to you, for whether it didn't matter if I told you you look good, you smell good, I, you know, rubbed your muscles, you know, whatever kind of signals that I was giving in my little, you know, my little way. You weren't. You needed. It needed to be sex.
Okay, so
it needed to be sexual. Okay. That's what you needed.
Oh, I agree, but let me tell you why that is the case. Because all of those other things can be given to everybody else. There's no difference between.
I don't touch every man the same way I touch you. I don't laugh at every man's jokes the way I laugh at yours.
So, again,
I don't flirt with other men.
I'm not saying what you do. I'm saying what you can do. Okay. I'm not saying what you do. I'm saying what is possible, because I've seen you be just as friendly with the Target people taking stuff to your car. And don't act like they don't take the stuff to your car.
I mean,
the African men at the Target always taking your stuff to the car, and I don't know what they.
I do not treat them. I do not talk to them the way I talk to you.
I'm not saying you do. I'm saying you could. I'm saying you could.
Now we talk about what I could do.
So
and not what I was doing.
So that was my differentiator. That was what separated me from.
You were the one who gets the panties. Never mind the compliments, companionship, and
I get the companionship,
togetherness, and dates, and
all of those
laying
things.
up on you, walking around naked cleaning. These are not things everybody gets.
Okay. So,
you
can be very specific.
It just outlines how what I was saying about we weren't letting each other know in the way that the person needed to know. Like, you were telling me I love you and I want to be with you by providing for me. And I was telling you that I love you by literally saying that I love you, or, you know, wow, your face.
I'm not gonna say take it back, because they'll get on me for that. They've already.
Your face is so freaking expressive. You're looking at me like, what was that supposed to do for me? And you don't know how that kind of hurts, like that. My attention and my, you know, whether I prepare a meal for you, whether I iron your shirt when we, you know, when you got someplace to be, whether I'm your person that you can call for about anything, you can tell me anything,
but all of those things, all of those things are reciprocal. So it's not like It's not like
some of those things.
It's not like I don't fix a meal for you. It's not like I don't iron your shirt when you. You know, we don't get into heavy gender roles.
Right?
My wife should make sure that I have these things. It's not like that at all. The person who's hungry cooks enough for both.
Right, and I think, you know, yes. This
equality of relationship. This everybody having equal input in this blur of what gender roles is, to me, says all of those things don't have the same.
Now they don't weigh as much because we're both doing them.
They don't weigh special because we're both doing them. And I'm not sure. I'm saying it accurately, but they don't. You want points for that?
I don't want points. I don't want points at all. It's not about points. It's not about points.
Okay.
It's about feeling like we're in a relationship.
What does that mean? Feeling that we're in a relationship.
That we are relating to each other, that I'm your person, you're my person. You can, if things are going wrong, I'm going to be there to help lift you up, to support you, to believe in you, to push you,
And I was doing all of those things.
And my point is, in a way that you were not receiving them from me as love, or and I don't think it was love. I wasn't receiving them from you as love. I was receiving them from you as obligation. And you weren't receiving all of that from me as to tell you that you're desirable to me and I'm attracted to you and I want to be with you.
Okay.
You would hear that in the act of sex. I wanted all those things in kisses and touches and, words of affirmation.
Okay.
And so we weren't giving each other what we needed to feel what we wanted to feel. We didn't even want to feel the same thing.
Right. And I wasn't sure we was going to make it.
I know.
And
I know.
And we both have had this conversation.
Sure.
Because I'm not blind or deaf to the streets. And I don't mean that in or to. I don't want to use the word my worth because that implies, it has so many connotations to it. But
you knew your worth as a man. That's fine to say. That's fine to say. And you felt like you could get what you needed from somewhere else, which you probably could. There's no probably in it. There's no doubt. You could have made a different choice and you could have moved on with somebody who matched you better in terms of sexual desire and libido and all those things. And who didn't have the baggage that I had, the relational baggage that I had. That things could be much more clear cut and dry, which is what, you would have preferred. You got complicated me. So, but I couldn't spend my time competing with the world. In every way that I live, I was competing with the world, competing with people who were smarter than me in medical school, competing with women I thought were prettier than me or had better bodies than me, who had a better sense of style than me, who, there was no end, who were more confident than me, who were more driven than me. There was all these ways to compete with others around you. And, either you were going to choose to be with me or not. I couldn't make my decisions based on at any moment somebody else could swoop in and get you. Because if you can be gotten, if you can be taken, you can be taken. So you were going to have to choose to be with me. There's, too much out of my control of the things, the baggage that I brought into the relationship, all of the inner turmoil that I brought into the relationship, the naivete that I brought into the relationship, I just had to decide to work on those things, and prayerfully, hopefully, you would be patient and you continue to stick around. I wasn't always sure why you were sticking around because, our brother had options. I wasn't even looking for options because, I was dealing with all that other stuff, and I had a lot of me to deal with. So, in terms of entertaining someone else, I do remember that when I was working at the temp job, I think it was the first temp job I got right after I left medical school. And I was working, I can't even remember, but I was actually on the Duke Hospital campus working. And there was a young man that I was working with. We were in pretty much the same job, I guess. And he showed an interest in me, but I had no interest in him whatsoever. Like, he was not attractive to me, but I really liked his personality. I was flattered by the fact that he was into me and would tell me things about, what he thought about me that were positive. And so I was keeping him around for those things, but I had no intention whatsoever. None. It's never even crossed my mind that the relationship would be more than me just getting compliments from him and us hanging out at work. That was it.
I could put the kibosh on that.
I know. You certainly put the kibosh on that. And he started to do things that were inappropriate. When he shows up to my gym, like, hey, I'm in the parking lot, let's go out after you work out. So that was inappropriate.
I was playing a lot of basketball in those days at the gym. And it was a couple of guys that I knew, just that I played with at the gym. And one of them worked in that building where you work as a security guard. And when you mentioned his name one too many times for me,
you told him
I told my guy, I said, I'm going to need you to go over here and I'm going to need you to say something to this guy. Do you know him? He was like, yeah, I see him all the time. I was like, yeah, he down there talking to my wife and I need that dealt with. And he's like, no problem. And I don't know what he said.
And I don't remember the dude ever saying to me, did your husband send somebody to come check me? But at the same time, you were telling me, you need to stay away from that dude. Why are you going to lunch with him? Why are you doing this with him? He's saying inappropriate things to you.
So don't get me wrong. This has nothing to do with whether or not you can go and have lunch with somebody or go and spend time hanging out.
It was his inappropriateness.
Once a person expresses and shows that they have interest in you, then we can't be this no more.
Right.
Because it's clear you want to be more than this.
Yeah.
And so, we can't be this. Although I did hear on one of the podcasts, that men will, and women too, will stick around for years in that friend zone.
I just heard that too. Waiting for the opportunity. I think that was what's the ex-football player who said that? Cam Newton said that. Yeah. But I will wait around for years.
Right.
For that opportunity. And I mean, it was what it was. But I say that to say I was getting something from him that I was not getting at home, even if I couldn't articulate that then, and I trusted your estimation of what was going on and, cut him back. But there was never a time where I was like, well, let me see what's out there.
Yeah, it was the show at your, I think it was the show at your gym was the
final straw. It was like, okay, you cannot.
I didn't say much before that, but
right.
when that happened,
he showed up at the gym. And
he don't even go to that gym.
No, he wasn't there to work out.
He was there to see you. He knew
I worked out there, and he met me when I was coming out of my class. He was at his
Right.
car like, hey, I'm here. Let's go out. Like, no, let's not. Now you're taking it out of the workplace. It's fine when we're at work. But I don't want to see you outside of the workplace. So yeah.
But
so I knew you had options, and I wasn't looking for options, but I wasn't like going to be. I couldn't hasten my growth in order to keep you. I still had to grow in my own time.
That might be a bar. That might be a bar.
I only say it because it's true.
We might have to write that
So
one
I'm
down.
trying to drop bars. I'm just saying I couldn't hasten my growth. It was not possible. I had to grow in my own time, and we had to get to where we got to in our own time. You know, some people might say, you know, if I wasn't, or another woman in my position, not getting the emotional validation and connection that she wanted, you know, why someone could easily say to you, why'd you stay? If you wasn't getting it like the way you wanted to get it and blah, 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 why'd you stay? And someone could say the same thing to me. I would never. If he thought he could just bring home the bacon, and we know of people who in the exact situation where the husband was being a provider and she said, that's not enough and I'm out. So that could have very well have been our story. But for whatever reason, we stuck it out. It was ugly there for a long time.
But we made it.
We made it. We survived when the enemy came in to take our lives.
I don't know that song.
That's Hezekiah Walker. He lift up a standard. I don't really know the words.
I don't know the songs. I don't know the songs. So
but you know Marvin Sapp.
Never would have made it.
Never would have made it.
It's Moni's song.
Exactly. Moni knows the story. She saw us arguing in her own way.
So, well, you know, we're better now, and I wonder if it's in large part due to the changes that you've made.
I'm gonna take that credit.
In large part due to changes that you made, and I think those changes, the reason we call the chapter Pillow Talk is because what she says that she learned in that journey that she went on was that she could soften me.
Yes.
By sleeping with me. That's basically what it boils down to. Right. She could soften everything that she...
All the complaints that I had about he's not affirming enough and he doesn't touch me, you know, unless it's supposed to lead to sex. So, all of those...
you know, and I don't have any generalizations about, you know, well, men need this. And I don't have any generalizations.
I don't want to talk about me and you.
But what I can say as a generalization.
Okay.
Just as a generalization.
I won't generalize, but I'm going to give you this one generalization. I hear
because you. I think it's uniform.
Okay.
Is the what I think we both learned in that process or in that thing is that sex can be like a reset button. For everything that you're going through, it can be. I'm not saying it is, but it can be.
And it has been for us. I don't even want to generalize there either, because it has been for us. Like, where I focus on the chapter is just a small piece of it, where, you know, I would be upset with you and, you know, or we're in the middle of an argument or we're having a disagreement and sex would be the first thing to go off the table. But I had to rethink that and say maybe sex is what we need to get us past over this impasse. Like we can't come to a resolution because we both bound up or frustrated.
It becomes self-fulfilling to me. We made it, but we just easily, we just didn't have stretches that were quite long enough to
we never had
critical state.
Yeah, we never had stretches. Yeah, that were, that we know other relationships have gone through where it's like weeks and months without sex. We never did that. We always found our way back to each other. And I think that comes just through communication, through finding ways to reconnect in a way like that. The whole idea of us finding a place where we can have a conversation that we knew wasn't going to go to yelling or to, leaving the room or those kind of things is by going to a restaurant that we both liked and just sitting and having that talk.
That's a whole chapter.
Sometimes that would break the whatever the ice was, or bring us back together. By the end of dinner, we're laughing with each other again, or whatever. And those would reconnect us for the time being,
because it's fleeting.
It was fleeting. It is
fleeting. And,
you have to reconnect. You continue to reconnect again and again. Yes, because life is life and all around us.
And so I hope that by this point you realize that I can be your refuge. That I, in some ways, but not in all ways.
Not in all ways,
and that's fine. And I'm good with that. I'm so good with that. I'm so good with that. Thank you, Classy T, and Something to Say. For being the rest of the fuge.
The rest of the fuge. Okay.
Being the rest of the fuge, I appreciate it. But it was tough times. It was tough times.
It was tough times. It was
tough times. But
it's not that tough now.
It's not as tough. No. Not by
other things make it tough,
but not. Yeah. It's not tough by exponentially. Exponentially, it's easier now.
And how I know that everything's going on in my life. First of all, I think just in general, we have a baseline of stress in our life, that is higher than most, higher than we would expect, higher than some. I don't know. Some people may have another source, financial source of stress, where you are always, you always have this baseline of like, what's going to happen next? Right. What's going to go wrong today? What am I going to have to deal with? What is going to, derail us? Right.
But taking care of a special needs kid for 25 years.
For 20, right. Exactly. Well, 23, almost going on 24. Right? She'll be 24 this year.
Yeah, you're right.
So, So that having a special needs person with the level of needs that she has, we always have this baseline of stress. And I am susceptible to letting stress reducing my libido, making me just want to sleep or whatever. Or, veg out in front of the TV, or those things that I might choose instead of coming to you for my refuge. And now I've gone on this whole journey and I forgot what I was going to say.
No comment. No comment. Welcome to my world.
Something about stress.
Welcome to my world. No comment.
Something about having to see you as part of my stress relief. I did have to. I don't think that's what I was going to say. I don't think that's where I was going, but I'm here now.
Okay.
So seeing you and being with you. Oh, I know exactly where I was going. So we have this baseline of stress, but during the pandemic, in the beginnings of the pandemic, where I won't try to give a time, but there was a point in the pandemic where we had done all the paperwork of closing down to Pump It Up as much as we could do anyway. We had stopped receiving the calls from the landlord and this bill and that. And there was nowhere to go. Simone wasn't in school. Nathan was doing his school at home. And I didn't have a job, but the state was paying me to take care of Simone. And we were sleeping as late as we wanted to sleep in. She was sleeping in and not getting up early in the morning. And there was just time period where life just kind of stood still for us. And that was the horniest I had ever been in my whole life.
I do remember that.
Yes, where you were almost like, okay,
I wasn't almost
sis.
like, I said, listen, be careful what you wish for. You think that's what you want until it's on.
Until it's on. Every time you turn around, like, don't you got something else to do? Yeah. I had nothing else to do, nowhere to be.
Because
no one needed anything, right? You still had a job.
Hadn't changed.
Right?
My life hadn't changed
you had
at
already
all.
been working from home, and you were continuing to work from home. And I was like, what you doing for lunch? What you doing for afternoon snack? Waking up early in the morning, all kinds of things. But and I was like, wow, this is me without stress. This is me. So that was a
what did I say?
What did you say? You said get off.
I said get off me. I did definitely say get off me a couple of times.
I said, what I say? What you say?
This won't last.
All right, and you were right. It didn't last. I mean, because we're back at all the things. But it was nice while it lasted. And I look back on that time fondly.
Do you? All right.
And I wish it had lasted longer.
I look back.
And then I realized, we never had a stress-free marriage.
I look back with mixed feelings. And I'm going to tell you what my mixed feelings were. Because I've said this. These are all things that I've said to you. Because, I'm not what I was.
Right.
You just any person who thinks that they are the same at 52, 51 as they were at 19, level, 20, 21 years old. It's crazy.
Those things, right.
So, I wasn't even in a position to take advantage.
I know.
Of this.
Sorry. We needed her back in the 90s.
I wasn't in a position to take advantage of it. We needed her
back in the 90s and early 2000s.
That's why my feelings were mixed. Like, this is all good, but this ain't this is all good.
It's not matching up. And I kind of think, I have heard that is a common thing where people will say, women reach their sexual peak in their 40s or at 40 or whatever the number is, whereas men are at their sexual peak at 20 or 25 or something. And that just doesn't line up, God likes to...
He laughing.
He likes to laugh at
humorous.
us. Yes. So I don't know. Same-sex couples are probably
that's a great question.
Doing much better because they're like we're at the same place at the same time.
They may have figured it out.
They they found the answer.
They may have found an answer.
You have to check in with a couple of same-sex couples and see if that's the case. But anyway.
So, all right. So
this was fun.
This was interesting. I learned some things today, so I didn't know. So that's good for me. I learned some things. So we'll see what happens, how much I can use them to help us. Yeah. And to make some changes in myself.
And that spontaneous versus responsive sexual desire is a thing. It is a phenomenon that you can look up and see, that, whatever the number, 36% of women or so, more like 5% of men fall into the responsive sexual desire. So yeah, it did put you in a place where it would seem like I must not desire you.
Anyway,
it's been great, everyone.
It's been a great episode. I hope it's been a great episode.
I hope, yes, we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did.
So our end of show bookkeeping bookkeeping.
Yes, join us in
what do we call it?
Housekeeping.
Sunday
nights in the basement on twitch.tv/DJ C-Sharp at 9 p.m. We, DJ C-Sharp, a.k.a. Clarence Lewis, plays the tunes, mostly R&B, some old school, some classics, all of this good stuff, duets. And I'm just on the mic cutting up with everyone in the chat. That's a live experience. We hope that you will join us there.
Yes.
And we've already talked about the book.
Don't forget the contest. So we're going to mention the contest again. We are running a contest that we are giving away a
loyalty and love
package.
Yes.
A loyalty and love package. Our friend author
romance
Javonda,
book package.
Our friend Javonda Robinson is an author who wrote several books, and she is donating them as giveaways for our listeners. So the way you qualify is you have to like and comment on stuff that we post, whether it's on IG or Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, any of those places. If you do those things, we will they'll count towards you winning the prize. We're keeping track of them, and maybe next week we'll be able to put up some numbers to say where some people are. I kind of already think I know who's in the lead. I'm not even going to begin to count. I'm not going to say out loud, but just someone who we have a lot of back and forth with. So we'll take some time this week and put the first set of numbers together. And then we'll go from there. And in the meantime, also check out authorjavondarobinson.com to learn more about her books, to learn more about her writing coach program. If you are interested in writing, her link will be in the description below this video. Or wherever you're watching this. If you're doing a podcast, if you're doing it on Spotify and other places, you'll see it down below. Yep. So. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You can see that it wasn't always easy for us, but we have found our rhythm, or we are continuing to find our rhythm, and we hope that listening to our stories can help you find yours. So that you can live by the rhythm and love by the rhythm. Peace. Peace. We want to give a shout out to friend of Rhythm of Love, the book as well as the podcast, author Javonda Robinson. She's been creating stories since she was a child. She now has 5 novels on the market, and she is a writing coach with her own business called Thinking to Inking. You can find out more about Javonda Robinson at her website, authorjavondarobinson.com. So, as a friend of the show, what she did was donate some books that she has written. I think they're going to be autographed.
Yeah, I think so.
Some autographed copies of her books, and we're going to give them away in our contest. So we're going to be running a contest for the month of June.
Get excited.
For the month of June. And the way we're going to work through the contest is for every comment and every like that you give on our videos and on our reels and things like that, we'll give you points. And the person who accumulates the most points at the end of the month will receive the package of all of her books, or the books that she gives us. Right. We think it's going to be 3, but maybe it's 5.
Maybe she's going to be all 5. We're not sure.
So we will put the package together and we will mail it out to whatever viewer who is supporting us as our thank you for your continued support during this time. So
for your engagement. And these are some sexy books, so something to be excited about, because we know that a lot of you are in relationships or married or not, and maybe you just like sexy romance novels with Black characters, really good and juicy stuff. We've read several of them, not all, but we've enjoyed them, the ones that we have read. So we're really excited to make these available to our supporters.
So thank you, author Javonda, again, and we look forward to reading your comments. We hope you've enjoyed another exciting episode of Rhythm of Love, the podcast, hosted by Clarence and Yalonda Lewis.
Theme song by Kendra R.
Book graphics by Rihanna Denise.
More information is available at cyllentertainment.com.
Please join us on Sunday nights for our live stream on twitch.tv/DJC Sharp.